10,000 subscribers, who would have thunk it? I wouldn't be here today had it not been for this amazing community. It has been that and that alone that has made me kind of keep going, and that's what gets me out and up onto this volcano with my camera every few days to continue this conversation. So please keep the conversation going. Thanks also for all of the support you gave me for that really weird video linked below and above, which was me just basically going on a walk. I thought I'd be back down to about 2,000 subscribers, which was my original target, by the way. For some of you, it was quite a kind of therapeutic experience, which I'm really chuffed to hear about. So there was also a competition that I announced in that video, and basically it was about something that I said in the video, and I see that a lot of you didn't make it to the end, which is actually where I said the thing. And that gets my kind of 10k a day, which is my aim. Not 10,000 steps, but 10k clicks. That is the second letter, so that's C. The other thing was the first initial of the first name of the 10,000th subscriber was the other letter, the first letter that you were meant to guess. Now, I've looked on my subscription feed and I've suddenly realised that people who don't have their subscriptions public, they don't appear on this feed. So there is no way of me telling the name of the person who is the 10,000th subscriber. So, as I think you'll agree, that was the most kind of lottery aspect of the competition. What I'm basically going to do is put an A to Z onto separate bits of paper, put them into a bowl and pick one of those out. Now, apologies to those of you who have brought out your inner George Soros and have shortened the odds by selecting initials that are kind of more likely to be maybe Western names. So if I pull out an X and one of you has a W and one of you has a Y, I'll give it to the person who came up with that initial first. So it's something C. We'll return to that later. Some of you may also notice that I've been doing less of this because, let's face it, it was getting a bit commuting with Christian. Needless to say, I've been in and out of London like a fiddler's elbow, but it's just been nice to hang out with you on Arthur's Seat for the last few episodes. And some of you may also feel I'm dedicating maybe a bit too much shed time to the bleep and bloopy machine that I've been fiddling with. So maybe it's time that we headed back to the shed, because we'll do this later. There's even more celebrations to be had. Spitfire Audio has come out with another Labs product in our new plugin. Very excited about this because it's an old favourite. It's our drum library, which was recorded by Stanley Gabriel in my old live room in my small studio. It's a tiny live room which gives you a really tight drum sound. And what Stanley has done very cleverly has given us that great initial board mix of a drum kit, that kind of sound that you don't really want to record the bass and the guitars and the vocals because you're just so happy with the drum kit sound. So it really kind of comes out and bites you from the keyboard. Lots of fun to be had there. And it's interesting because there's an interesting case study here. A friend of mine did some finger drums like I did. He wanted a really live sounding thing. And he sent me this MIDI file and said, listen, could you do anything to this to kind of liven it up? So I'm just going to run it down for you to have a listen to and take you through how I made some MIDI tweaks to it to make it more kind of natural, to make it sound more real, and to give it just that little bit more funk. Now, my first thing with this is the drum kit doesn't sound balanced. The kick drum sounds very loud. The snare sounds kind of muffled. So it's not only a case of kind of balancing the kit when you go to mix it. I think you should imagine all great drummers can really balance their kits whilst playing. And that's something that John Bonham was famous for. He didn't just twat his kit. He actually really apparently was quite gentle on the old cymbals. But when it came to the snare, he didn't even need a snare mic for those stadiums because you just twat it so hard. So one thing to do is to certainly adjust the dynamics of the snare versus the kick. The other thing that I think is absolutely crucial to drum programming is to play with the dynamics. And with that original MIDI file, I felt that everything was at one dynamic. The snare was at one, the kick was at one. So let's listen to what I did. What I've done is separate everything out for your convenience, is just listen to what I did with the kick. So it's still some stuff I could maybe wobble around a little bit more, but you can hear there's more a kind of, there's on the ones we're really feeling it, particularly on some key ones, and then particularly with things like this, it's more of a wa-dum. It's more of a kind of bounce, and that's what happens when drummers are playing. They're bouncing up and down, so they use that momentum to cancel out the inertia of these drums and keep them ringing. What I did with the snare was a combination of, you can see that we've got real differences in dynamics there, but also I added some key kind of ghost notes. So let's have a listen to that. These up here are little they're kind of bounces, but then we've also got, and then really loud ones here. So let's have a listen to that. So you can really hear that rim shot. The hi-hat, same principles, and I think it's kind of counterintuitive. I think a lot of great drummers don't hit the kind of downbeat hard on the hi-hat. They actually use the hi-hat as a syncopator against the kick and the snare. So actually what they tend to accent is the offbeat, which you'll hear certainly as it evolves here. I've added an open hi-hat there, which is also very funky. Not done anything with the toms, thought the programming in that was fantastic. So let's have a listen to how that came out. So this is all of them together. Very happy with that. However, as I said, Stanley has given us a blank canvas to work with, a neutral palette from which this drum kit really takes to a little bit of engineering really, really well. Now, this is when we get into the fundamentals of engineering, and that is that these little 1% go to make a huge difference. But as you'll see, as I move through each drum, I'm just tweaking it ever so slightly, but I will prove to you at the end that the net result is really quite astonishing, I hope. I'm not an engineer, but I think it's great for us composers to develop these chops to not fear engineering. It's all quite simple. Basically, you just pull out the stuff that you like. So with the kick, what I've done is I've actually reduced a bit of the clickiness that Stanley got so brilliantly, just to make it a bit more boom as opposed to kick. Just boosted a tiny bit of the very bottom, and then I've chopped off everything below kind of hearing. This makes the mix a lot more efficient. Without. So just a little bit more moody. As I say, these are tiny little increments, but you'll see at the end it sounds quite different. The other thing I did was, as with a lot of the drums, is I really smashed it, so you're just getting the impact, so it gives you a real kind of twatting around the nozzies. And again, without, kind of flatter sound. Curiously brings out the bottom end. With the snare, similar principles, just EQing out the bits that I like, which here is just the very top end, and again I've chopped off the bottom so it's just not too kind of fat at the bottom. So here. And then added a bit of compressor, doing exactly the same thing. So the key here is to have a delayed attack, so you're getting the snap at the front and then a slow, well, a kind of medium release, so it's not kind of, what you'll find is it'll have a modulating effect if you set the release too quick, because it'll basically be kind of strangling the drum and then kind of jumping in with the resonance of the drum. So with the hi-hats, I'm going to play it without. Quite a lot of bottom end there, so I just EQ'd that out, filtered it out, and added some top. And then again, compressed it, really kind of smashing it. And this kind of compression really brings out the characteristics that I think you'll be EQing as well, as you have probably noticed. With the toms, they only appear a couple of times. What I felt was and this is actually when I heard the whole kit back with my treatment, is they're actually a little bit muffled sounding. So all I did, let's have a listen without, was just EQ that out. Just a bit of that sound, just gives it a real sense of, presence. Cymbals, I did absolutely nothing. Very rare that you need to do too much with cymbals. So let's have a listen to where we're at with that. Loving that very much. Now, you've seen that I've bussed everything to bus 2, and that is a Lex chamber, a small chamber, light. I've got differing amounts, so less kick, more snare, much less hi-hat, otherwise it becomes quite bright sounding, and then being quite bold with the toms and cymbals. Very nice. And then what we've done is we've bussed the entire drum kit, including the reverb, into a kind of master bus. And again, what I'm doing here is just eking out the stuff that I like. So trying to get more from the bass drum, more from the top end, give it just a slight smile, a kind of. So it's starting to have a little bit more of a processed feel, but that's what I'm going for. It's, it's something that I want it to sound like it comes from a record. And then again, I just smashed it with a bus compressor. Not to everyone's taste, but I imagine that would sit within a mix much better. I took it just one stage further, which is a very common technique for a lot of engineers, and certainly for me, is I do find the kick a little bit problematic. So it's got this kind of hum going on. It doesn't really have it doesn't have the kind of hip-hop area enough. So what I simply did was I duplicated the MIDI and I put it into my favourite, apparently all producers have their favourite kick that they use on everything, and I can't remember where I got mine from, but it's basically this sound. Filtered out. And then what I did is I did a thing where I, again, EQ'd actually a lot of that with this bit scooped out. So I'm making room for the sub kick. And then what I also did was reduce some of the after the main kick with a noise gate. So let's see how that works. So in isolation, that feels like something kind of switching on and off. It feels more electronic, but I think you'll agree, hopefully, that when you put everything together, that sounds, really quite tidy. The snare, I felt that there was just a kind of crack that was missing. It's got lots of lovely rim, lovely top, but there's just that, again, that slightly hip-hoppy crack. So I just took the MIDI, duplicated it. I actually reduced the ghosts so they were almost non-existent, and this is the sound. Right, so let's put all of that together and see how it sounds. If I take us back to the original version that I programmed or tweaked, so with no EQ, no compression, no reverb, and none of those cheeky little fake samples, this is what it sounded like. Okay, so back to where we are now. Anyway, probably not to everyone's taste, but I hope you agree, maybe a slightly more refined sound. And I just would say, don't be scared of fiddling around with stuff. The secret to engineering is to bring out the elements that you like and that are necessary. And as you saw here, it's just about making a little bit of room for the different sounds. And these little 1%, you go, oh, am I really going to bother just tweak that by like 2 dB, just the top end? Well, when you put it all together, it becomes quite an incredible difference, I think you'd agree. Okay, right, back to the trifle dish of destiny. Okay, so we've got the A to Z here, and we basically need to find the winning first initial. Sorry again for not really researching YouTube, but I hope you all agree that that was the most kind of lottery-esque moment of the competition. So basically, I'll draw out the first initial, and it'll go to the first person who has got that initial, i.e. when they posted their comment first. And if no one has that initial with the second initial, then it'll basically go to the closest person. So, for example, if the initial is X, it'll go, as I said before, to someone. If someone's got W and someone's got Z, it'll go to the person with W. Okay, so I'm going to close my eyes. Completely cannot see anything. I can't really see anything at the best of times because you wouldn't believe how strong this light is. Okay, let's... I can feel I've got 2. Okay, right. And it goes to